To solve a mystery, don't see the case, study the case. Hello, fellow scientists. I am Desiree the Libut-Libut, and I will be your third reporter for using the case study as a teaching strategy, and I will be discussing to you only portions of this whole lesson 14 as the others does, and our discussion will start at the developing or selecting the case. So, before we start, I have a short and important reminder after this lesson, and there will be a little quiz after the discussion. So I encourage you to listen carefully. And now, are you ready to learn with me? If you are, then let us begin. So, developing or selecting the case. In the context of teaching, developing, or selecting the case, this refers to a teaching strategy commonly known as the case method. And in some field of study, there are large numbers of formal case studies available off the shelf, and other major sources of materials that can be used to for cases are journals, newspapers, magazines, novels, and DVDs. And in some instances, it is best to write your own case from scratch, and this may be a time-consuming exercise, but it allows you to incorporate some of your own experiences into the case study. Whenever you use case developed by someone else or develop your own, you have to ensure that the case meets your need better than an alternative teaching strategies. Otherwise, it will be poor use of time. And according to Kalin, 2009, whenever you are selecting or developing a case, it is important to consider the following criteria. And the first one is the outcomes focus. The case must be an integral part of the course and not just an interesting discussion. The case must make a positive contribution to the students' achievement of the course outcomes. It must lead them to acquire depth of analysis and into the type of thinking that are reflected in the outcomes. So the second one is the interest. Interest is influenced by the style in which the case is written, and that is according to Herod. And the case must be seen as relevant and interesting by the learners. But why is there a need to get your students, listeners, or readers' attention or interest? Well, that is because it is crucial for their learning and overall agreement in the classroom. And in the context of case study, students are encouraged to analyze and discuss real-life cases, as it is what most piques their interest, and it is for them to apply relevant concepts and theories and propose possible solutions or make decisions based on the concrete information provided. So, okay, and the third one is recency. So recency, current problems, something like that. So recency, as I've said, current problems will probably be more engaging for the students than historical causes will. And Herod in 1997 suggested that the best case addressed issues that are not more than 5 years old. So the fourth one is the rigor. What is rigor? Rigor in academics refers to the level of difficulty, complexity, and intellectual challenge, while in science, rigor refers to the meticulousness and reliability of the experimental design or data collection, analysis, and interpretation work. In the case, should address issues that require collaborative discussions. So here, in the case must lead the students to develop situations and analysis and a deep understanding of the context of the case to an appreciation of the open-endedness of the case issues and into their interrelatedness and to the examination of the issues from the multiple perspective. So the fifth one is the discussion focus, and in this the case should lead the students, first individually or then as a group, to make decisions about some important issues. Like for example, the think, pair, share, or the think, pair, square, share method. You can use that. So next in row is the generality. Here, each case will be unique, but each case should lead the students to some conclusions that are generalizable to other broader contexts. Next in line is the realism. From the word itself, realism, real. So it should be realistic, which refers to real life situations. But why is there a need to relate your topic to a real life situation? Well, because it allows students to experience situations that they believe they might face. But more importantly, it gives exposure to the students to be able to analyze complex situations and that they might encounter later in life, and somehow make refined decisions when it happens. And real life problems rarely come clearly refined and neatly packaged like typical textbooks exercise, and they are more like to be complex and ill-defined. Classes need to reflect this. The case should make it possible for the students to be drawn into the drama of difficult real-world situations and decisions, for the teacher to be able to pose questions that will maximize the students' understanding of these issues. Next is the length. So the case should be long enough to raise important issues, supply essential information, and engage the learners. Cases that are too long or that contain too much fine details may distract the students from the key issues. So you should be mindful of the length and not too long and not too short. And now we're down to readability. So readability. The information in the case must be accessible to the learners. It should be written in appropriate language and style. So now let's get on to the teacher's preparation for the classroom discussion. According to VOLP 2002, in general, the more you do, the more the students will do. By showing your commitment to the students, by doing well prepared, and by showing concern for the students, you will be able to extract a similar level of commitment from the students. Students will generally prepare up to, but not beyond, the standards of preparations of the instructor. The first step in your preparation must be to review the outcomes you wanted the learners to achieve. And the next step in your preparation should be a detailed analysis of the case. You must thoroughly understand all the issues that the web of relationships between them. And you must take the time to clarify your understanding of the theoretical basis for all possible interpretation of these issues and be able to justify the conclusions you would reach. Although you will not want to impose your point of view on the students, still you must be prepared to share your view with them. And an important part of your preparation will be the development of a set of questions to focus the class discussion. If the case contains substantial issues and a degree of controversy or dilemma, you will probably need only 4 or 5 questions, and these questions should help the students define important aspects of the problem, generate alternatives, reach a considered position, and reflect on the broader issues raised by the case, and try to anticipate how the students might react to the case and to the questions that you will use to guide the discussion. And next is the guiding of the classroom discussion. So here, the general principle of effective case discussions are the same as those for any other whole class discussion. You have to initiate the discussion, keep the students focused on the main issues, challenge the students to think deeply, help the students resolve differences, remind the students of the outcomes they are trying to achieve, and bring the discussion to a logical conclusion. There are several particular points to take note when the discussion is based on the case study. First is the introduction. Here in the introduction, the students will have to prepare for the discussion by reading the case materials and try to answer the focus questions so you do not have to spend a large amount of time settling the scene for the discussion as a teacher. And here in the introduction, it is important to remind the students briefly of how the case links to the main issues and they are studying and where it is leading them. So next is the discussion. This is not just sharing of ideas, nor it is a process of the students presenting ideas for your approval. Here, the students must be deliberately involved in a joint effort to gain a deeper understanding of the issues embedded in the case, and you might need to remind the students of this point as they try to resolve the conflict of reaching a decision. You need to emphasize that the analysis of the case is a group task and all the students should feel free to raise questions or express their doubts. And you should also, as a teacher, listen carefully to all contributions and encourage the students to elaborate and to justify or clarify their contributions when necessary. You may also want to summarize the contributions by building up a mind map or a flowchart on the board, but do not use the board to just possibly record unrelated points. In some cases, it will be appropriate to augment the class discussion with some sort of a role play that enable the students to engage more directly with the issues in the case. So the last one that we are going to discuss is the questioning. The questioning, it is the important skill that a teacher during discussion must have. You should ask open-ended questions as a teacher to make a discussion or to make the discussion more interactive and interesting. Your questions should encourage the students to consider all the important issues in the case, but they should not give the students the impression that you are trying to guide the discussion to your predetermined conclusion. Your questions might serve any of the following purposes. First is the clarification. For example, can you explain what you mean by that? Can you explain what you mean by this? So here you try to clarify something about the topic or the idea of the learner. Next is the elaboration. For example, can you expand on that idea? You try to clarify or understand the idea given. And next is the generalization. In what other situation might that principle apply? So you try to get what their general idea about that topic. And the next one is the structuring. What fact need to be considered before we focus on the emotional issues? Yeah. And then next, the structuring is the comparison. How is that different from this? How is that different from that? So you try to compare two different things. So the next one is the substantiation. Here, for example, how can we justify these assumptions? And the next is the linking. How do these two ideas relate to one another? You try to relate or try to look for the difference of two things. And next is the engagement. What would you do in that situation? Blah blah blah. And then the integration. What general principle might help us understand this situation? And the consensus. Why might some people agree with that idea? And of course the focus. How does that take us closer to a situation? And those are all the possible questions that you can ask to your students. And a little reminder, use your questions sparingly so that your interventions are subtle and the discussion are not does not become a question. And answer session. So your question should keep your discussion going, not dominate not dominate it, not dominate all the discussion to yourself. So all in all, whenever you use case developed by someone or else, or someone else's, or develop your own, you have to ensure that the case meets your needs better than an alternative teaching strategy. Otherwise, it will be a poor use of time. And this ends my discussion, and you know it. It's quiz time. Ready your paper and your pencil as well as yourselves, for you are only given 10 seconds to answer every number. And your time starts now. Good job, everyone. I know that you did well, and I would like to know your scores by commenting it down below. And this concluded this video, and I hope you have learned something from me. Once again, I'm Desiree Libut-Libut, leaving you a quote that to solve a mystery, don't see the case, study the case. Bye!